we posted a video in the last week about my thoughts of what if Jay said no? No, I won't be on your side, Roman. No, I won't be on your side, Jimmy. And I thought I made a pretty fair argument about that. So what have they done the last couple of weeks? They've had Jimmy go to Raw. They've had the Bloodline cost Jay the Intercontinental Championship. And they brought it on themselves, really. Because Jay didn't seem to be really interested in talking to his brother or helping out Roman. And then they show up and cost him, which is like poking the bear. So they poke the bear, and what happens? Jay shows up on SmackDown, and he gets involved, and we have new tag team champions in the Motor City Machine Guns. And we get a hug with Jimmy and Jay. And a hug that is watched from the aisleway by Roman Reigns. So initially, I had heard what happened. And I'm not going to spoil SmackDown for this week because they did tape it. So I will, and I had these thoughts before I read spoilers, which I'm not going to talk about here. And initially, I was like, man, they kind of rushed that. But if you think about it more, they didn't rush it. They didn't bring them all back together in 1 week. Jay showed up to mess with the guys who messed with him. The current iteration of the Bloodline. But he came to back up his brother, not to back up Roman Reigns. And that is important because we are still a month away from Survivor Series. Now, there could be a match at Crown Jewel that happens before then. That's a possibility. But you had Roman give that look. And Roman with the no yeet. Jimmy and Jay, when you look at their timeline of events, right? They had that Bloodline Civil War match. And Jay pins Roman. And then Jay gets the title shot at SummerSlam last year. And Jimmy costs him. And there was that weird, like, well, why is he going back against him? Blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't have done. And Jimmy was in that weird, like, purgatory where he was kind of the loser of the two. And then they kind of went backwards with Jimmy and Jay at WrestleMania. And it was just like, Jay's past this. That's been my whole thing. Jay was past it. When they took him to Raw and Cody brought him over, like, started to do his own thing, and they almost dragged him back into with Jimmy because, like, we have to have this match. And as we saw, it didn't work. I don't want to say it set Jay back, but it kind of paused his momentum. Brother versus brother at WrestleMania paused the momentum, and then he started to get it back. And we see where he's at now. And I don't have a problem. I mean, it was, once again, a little predictable to have the Bloodline cost him the IC championship, and it's back on Braun Breaker. But they wanted to get, the old Bloodline, start to get them back together. So on Friday, it got a big pop. There's no doubt about that. Now, a few things happen as a result. You put Jimmy and Jay back together. You have Roman look. You still have that to play with. It's what I've been saying all along. Roman has to give Jay credit. He has to stare him in the eye and say, I'm proud of you. Look what you did. Look what you did without us. Now, the old Roman, and maybe this will happen because you don't want them to come back together so easily right away, might say, I'm glad what I taught you helped you. And that's where Jay's got to come off and go, you don't get credit for this. Yeah, I watched everything you did. But everything you did, you needed us. We were always there to back you up. I went to Raw by myself. I had to fight opponents that you created for this family during your championship reign. I had to go take care of that on my own. Yeah, Sammy's still with me. Yeah, Cody was by my side. But there are people that are still mad at you and us. And I had to win them over. And that's all I've done for the last year. By myself on Monday Night Raw. I did that. These people got behind me. My family was over here. And now my family needs me. And my brother needs me. And I'm going to be there for my brother. because he came to talk to me. You didn't come to talk to me. You sent him. You need to acknowledge me. If I'm going to stand on your side, we are equal. You are not my tribal chief. I don't have to answer to you. Solo's not my tribal chief either. But Jey Uso is a man who stands for Jey Uso, first and foremost. I take care of me, because that's what I have to do in this business. That's what I've been doing for the last year. And Roman has to acknowledge that. Roman has to show respect to that. Roman has to be humble, which goes along with being a babyface anyway. He needs to be humble. He needs to understand that he needs the help, because he has been laid out multiple times by this iteration of the Bloodline. So everything that happened on Friday with them getting involved in it, you got a couple of different things out of that. You set up the eventual reunion of Jey and Roman. Great. You got the big pop for the Usos coming back together. Great. But I think they did a good job with the Motor City Machine Guns. Because you can look and go, oh, they just showed up on their background and Bloodline stuff. However, think about how the Machine Guns have been presented to the WWE audience in their first two appearances, besides the vignettes that have run. Last week, they win. They get this number one contenders match. They're facing DIY, a very similar team. Nobody expected them to challenge for the tag titles on Friday, but they win the match, and we get right into all of it. So now, 2 shows, 2 appearances, 2 matches, 2 wins. And they're the number one contenders to the Bloodline's tag team titles. And then they do the match. Nick Aldis comes out, and Solo, and here we go. And you make that the main event. And while you know the Bloodline's going to get involved, because that's what they do, you also get Roman and Jimmy, and then eventually Jey. And the Machine Guns win. So now you have put the Machine Guns in the same spotlight as the biggest story in the company. And I think it would be fair and easy to say, hey, wow, they won with outside interference. But yeah, but they also won 2 matches in one night. And they won 3 matches in 2 weeks. And I think that's an important part that we have to focus on. Because it wasn't just about, well, the Bloodline, Roman and Jey or Jimmy helped them win. No, they had to win 2 matches in 2 nights, in one night, back to back. So you've now presented them as, wow, these guys can do anything. Because they had to deal with Bloodline stuff. It wasn't a 2-on-2 situation. They got some equalizers. And then those equalizers were able to spin that off into what they were doing with Jimmy and Jey and Roman from the aisle. So you gave the Machine Guns a big spotlight, 3 big wins. I would not have expected Bloodline to lose anything between now and Survivor Series. But now you've had both sides of this OG versus original Bloodline cost each other championships. So the gold's out of the way, which is probably a good thing. Not about the WWE title. While Roman wants that, he's got other things to handle. It's not about the IC title. The Bloodline cost Jey that. It's not about the tag titles. Jey cost the Bloodline that. It's about the now new civil war of what's going on here. But there's one thing I do want to bring up. A lot of this is about Roman and The Rock and the main event level matches we can get out of this. I don't know what happens to Jey and Jimmy as the Usos after this all ends. If it's next month, let's say, at Survivor Series. Does Jey go back to Raw by himself? That's a question. If Rock is the one pulling the strings, Where does that leave Solo Sikoa, and where does that leave Jacob Fatu? I, like many of you, was not on board with the Solo-led version of the Bloodline for quite some time. Adding Jacob Fatu to the group has given them a hell of a lot more credibility, and they have been booked stronger. And admittedly, in the last month, I think Solo is starting to come into his own as a character in terms of how he's presenting himself and how he speaks and all that. Though we saw more of that on display on Friday. What does his next 6 months look like? Because there is something in Solo. There has been something in Solo. I've seen it going back to NXT. The company clearly saw it. Did he have an easier way to get plugged into things because of who he is? Yes, but he has come through on that. And in the last 6 to 7 months, he's been asked to be, the leader of this group. He's been asked to be the foil for Roman Reigns, the foil for Cody Rhodes, the foil for Kevin Owens, the foil for Randy Orton. That's not an easy spot. But I don't want him to get lost in all this. I think Jacob's done enough that he's going to be fine. That people are going to want to see more of him. I think people want to see Roman and Jacob. They want to see that match. So you have that. I just wonder where this leaves Solo. If Rock's the one that's the puppet master. Mark Henry said to me the other day, what if Solo gets fed up? What if he's just a pawn and he ends up back with Roman? Okay. You just don't want to little brother him too much. Just like you don't want Jay to be little brother. And I don't think they're going to let that happen. You don't want Jimmy Uso to be little brother anymore. And I don't think that's happening. You have a chance to elevate everybody here. And then where do they go after the fact is the question. Hey, this is Matt Camp. Thanks for checking out one of our recent clips from the Wrestling Mat. Why is someone so close to The Rock kind of throwing Cody under the bus?
Yeah, a lot of people won't engage with Jim Cornette. I did, just because I have a mark for Jim Cornette. And
Please subscribe right now. Hit the like and turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing. And I think you should listen to your TV partners. Let me tell you about WWE and a little insight. More subscribers means more content. And make sure you follow us on social media at WrestlingMat23 on both Twitter and Instagram.